Hello and welcome to Global Sanctuary for Elephants podcast, Global Rumblings. Global Sanctuary for Elephants, or GSE for short, is a non-profit organization with a mission to create vast safe spaces for captive elephants where they are able to heal physically and emotionally, often from very traumatic pasts. I'm your host, Nadia Mari, and I'll be taking you to the lush jungle of the Mato Grosso region in central Brazil, home of GSE's initial project, Elephant Sanctuary Brazil. Currently home to 5 female Asian elephants, lovingly referred to as the girls. Hello and welcome back to Global Rumblings. Thank you for tuning in again this week for a new episode. Let's head straight over to Brazil to say hi to Kat and Scott. Hello, you two. How was your morning?
I'm good, Nadia. How are you doing?
I am well, but it is cold.
That was my cue, Kat. I am well, but it is cold. Have you still got the cold spell in Brazil?
It disappeared for a couple of days, and now it came back. Last night was quite chilly, the coldest night of the year so far. But right now it's sunny, and everybody, elephants, dogs, cats, wildlife, people are all thoroughly enjoying the sunshine.
Oh, that's good. Good to hear. Yes. We left off last week with Bambi arriving safely at the sanctuary and taking a mud bath and dusting herself. But today we're going to take a short break from Bambi's next few weeks, months at the sanctuary, because you like to talk about the broader topic of recovery, which each of your elephants goes through, not only mentally, physically.
The little detour ended up happening because we did a post about Guillermina, and like everybody else, she's gone through her journey of recovery, and it's never linear. There are always ups and downs, and sometimes 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, 4 steps forward, 1 step back. But we did a post talking about how she's being a little demonstrative towards Mara and Hana. And she's not, it's nothing terrible, but it's not ideal either. And she had been better, and it was this little bit of a lapse. And I think for me, I was surprised at the response we got from some of our supporters, especially because of how much we talk about recovery and all of the different individual elephants' journeys that, you know, people know and understand. That it seemed like people had less of an understanding for Guillermina having, you know, a couple of steps back, and seemed to be looking at it from a more simplistic perspective of, oh, she just needs somebody her age and that will fix everything. And for me, it just seemed strange.
It's a little dismissive, you know, and I think it's easy when things are going well for people to forget the journey, you know, to forget the challenges of it. And, you know, when Maya had multiple times where she was off on her own and didn't want to engage, or, you know, was not hyper respectful of the others. You know, she wasn't demonstrative pushing anybody, but she would displace them off their food and, you know, come over and just take what she wanted without being respecting them. And no one ever said, oh, she needs somebody of her own age, you know, because she had those at her own age. And actually what she needed was time to go be Maya and explore her life. And Gijin, the same thing.
Maybe for listeners who don't know who Guillermina is, can you briefly, she's elephant number 8, if you count her mum as number 9, Pocha.
Yeah, so I think that's an important element too, because when we talk about recovery of each individual, of course, they all come from horrific past. You know, we know this. You know, they've been captured from the wild, most of them. They've been sent in isolation. Hana spent nearly 50 years alone. Bambi was alone, and then with another elephant she didn't get along with.
I think everybody's been circus first, then zoo or some other weird sort of farm facility.
And I think it's almost more acceptable for them to have trauma if they've been through circus first. In some people's minds, and people don't always make the connection to the sterility of what happens in many captive zoo worlds, especially small zoo worlds, of what happens to that development. Because not only, you know, in circus, a lot of times you actually have more psychological stimulation because you're traveling from place to place. You've been in multiple locations. And Guillermina, I think, you know, a fundamental aspect of her development was completely taken away because she lived in one of the most sterile environments we've ever seen.
Sure.
We've talked about it before, but a hole in the ground, a literal concrete pit that was a concrete floor, concrete walls, concrete little dungeon of a barn, never being able to look out at the horizon at all. The only passageway that they could look out was a little wheelbarrow gate where people could go back and forth. And the first time they really got to stand and look at the horizon on any level, looking out straight in front of them and not see concrete, was when we opened up the wall, when they opened up the wall to put the crates in place, the transport crates.
And she was born there, which is important for listeners who don't know. So Guillermina was actually born in captivity and saw nothing except a concrete wall in front of her.
Born in a concrete pit. And we talked about it when she first came. And I remember commenting when people saying, oh my God, she must be so elated to be in this new environment. And my thought was actually, did she have imaginary friends that didn't come with her? What are her survival mechanisms in that concrete pit for her to come out of that? It's actually psychologically really well, emotionally really sound. There's some issues, but did she leave her friends behind? Did she have friends in the different faces of the rocks, of the concrete wall? We don't know what those survival mechanisms were. And to think that, oh my God, she must be so happy she's out of that concrete pit. Well, maybe she's actually longing for that because that was still home. That was still her life for so many years. And to give them a chance to adapt can be stressful a little bit, can be, a little bit challenging.
I mean, they're the only elephants that we've brought to sanctuary. Well, this sanctuary that didn't want to leave the barn. I mean, it took them 3 days, 4 days to fully leave the barn. The barn was open all the time. They could have left at any point, and I'm sure we could have gotten them to leave the barn if we wanted to, but it is all part of that autonomy and respecting the process. And if they found it overwhelming and the barn was more secure for them and that's where they wanted to stay for a few days, we're fine with that. We can close one side, clean the other. We can take care of them that way. And if that's what they need because of where they came from, and that, going from not being able to see anything except for concrete in the sky above you to being in this vast natural open space, if that was too overwhelming for them, we were happy to have them stay in the barn as long as they were comfortable.
Do you think it's an age thing?
No, not at all, because Pocha was the same way. I mean, Pocha was 50 something years old. She didn't want to leave the barn.
And she was circus before.
Yeah.
Zoo.
And she was 50 years in that concrete pit. So no, I don't think it's age related at all. It's going to be individual. And I think that's such a critical part of the discussion is Lady had her individual journey. Kat said it earlier today. Everyone embraced that. She didn't want to be close to friends, and everyone said how
there
great.
There were definitely a few people that struggled with it and had always hoped somewhere in there that she would find the one elephant, which would, it's a possibility.
And we would have loved that for her if that's what if she felt comfortable with it. But what she felt comfortable with was having her own space, not having interaction on a physical level, having interaction on a more energetic and vocal level, and that was totally okay for the vast majority of people, and Maya's journey, like we said, for a time of not wanting to be interacting with others and not really opening up her heart again until she opened up her heart to Bambi recently. And
even Mara, who has pushed Bambi away now twice, essentially, it just seems like there's more acceptance for that than there has been for Guillermina.
And maybe because she is younger and more energetic, and people see, her as the little punk little teenager, and she is a little bit of a punk teenager sometimes.
Sure.
But that doesn't make her a bad elephant. That doesn't make her, doesn't change the right that she has to evolve through this journey. That is not 6 months or 12 months or 18 months or 24 months for any of them. This is a journey that is, for the rest of their life, actually, a journey of evolution and recovery.
That's what I meant by age. I thought that maybe some supporters think, well, she's younger, she can adapt faster. But you're saying, no, it's individual. And even Guigi, she's 24. But when I was there, you said she's probably like 13 or 14. So she has a lot to learn. And just because she's younger, it doesn't mean that her recovery journey is necessarily faster than the older elephants. Is that correct?
I mean, the reality is if you have a human child who had been, and this happens, scarily enough, locked under the stairs, and that's where they lived for 8 years. And they come out, and people don't expect them to be able to just adjust because they're little kids. They have all the sympathy in the world for everything that they've
Yeah.
gone through and how terrible that must have been. And, they expect in that respect for somebody to honestly be scarred for life because of what they went through. But, with Guillermina, it is that I think it's just people looking at it, I don't know, maybe just in a simplistic way of thinking there's an easier fix.
I think we would all love the easy fix, but trauma doesn't work that way.
Sure.
Recovery from trauma doesn't work
Oh my
that
God,
way.
nothing works that way.
It'd be beautiful, but but the journey is freaking amazing.
Sure.
And just looking at her this week, and there'll be some posts coming up soon. And by the time this podcast, or maybe the post will already be there. Geisha, my God, the vocalizations coming out of her now are vocalizations we hadn't heard since her mom died. And that let's bring another element of this with Guillermina. Which of the elephants came here with somebody that they were born and raised with and had them just die after 5 months? And that was her mom.
Yeah.
So not only is she recovering from all those years in a concrete pit, but on top of that, she's adding this unfathomable grief of losing your mom just 5 months after entering this new world.
Sure.
And to not have an understanding, or at least a empathy for that journey, and an understanding of that intense complexity and difficulty that she must be having. It's just interesting. And I think that's what Kat brought it up earlier. It's interesting to see the difference between the acceptance in those journeys.
And it definitely wasn't everybody. It was absolutely a minority, but it was still, I don't know, for some reason, I was still really surprised just because of how understanding in general everybody seems to be. And I know we're all far from perfect, but for me, I'm always really impressed with where Gigi is.
Absolutely.
The reality is, if you had asked us when she arrived, how do you picture her in 2 years? This wouldn't be it. We never would have had that expectation for not only from where she came from, and that was all she knew because she was born into it, but losing her mom, but also the relationship she had with her mom. Her only idea of what an elephant relationship was pretty terrible. She would kick her mom, she would hit her mom, she would push her mom, and not lightly. She hasn't done to any of the girls here what she did to her mom. But there was so much going on with her that I would have definitely thought her recovery would have taken longer, and she wouldn't have been in as good of a place as she is now at all.
No, she's processed a lot. She's grown tremendously. And I touched base a little bit on this week with the vocalizations. And for those who remember, talking about Maya's journey, remember after Gita passed away, Maya shut down vocally. She did not have that same voice. And it wasn't until she opened up to Bambi again, that she started, having some of the vocalizations that she only had done with Gita. And we actually have something similar going on with Guillermina now. And this week she started doing some of the same squeaks and the same little, I'm going to say little fart noises, but I don't even know what they are. The little raspberry noises that she's doing on the mouth. That it's almost like she's trying to practice something. It's really, really subtle. It's really quite charming. And we haven't heard those in months and months and months. And she did that multiple times this week, which is beautiful to see that expression again and finding the comfort again. And that was such a smaller journey than Maya went through. We're talking about a year.
Maya was years.
Gigi's just 2 years, so it's been a year and a half after her mom passed, and she's starting to come back out of that shell a little bit. She's always been expressive, but not in the same way she was her mom, not the same type of vocalization as she was with her mom. And I think also it's been beautiful to see the journey that Maya and Bambi are on, and how Gigi is actually part of that little family of celebration of friendship. That is just really beautiful to see right now. And again, far exceeding expectations that we had of this young little lady.
And you figure if you look at even before any of this, she was trying, from the get-go. She responded to the different elephants differently. she was more gentle with Hana and Mara. There was a clear recognition that they weren't on the same level with her that Maya and Bambi were. And she adjusted. She approached them differently. She would catch herself sometimes when she's coming on over a head full of steam, not aggressive, just her speed, her energy. She would try to slow herself down and stuff. Excuse me. We have little baby owls that were brought to us, and 2 of them are being very cute right now and very distracting. This is really bad. Even with the relationships between her and Bambi and her and Maya, they're very different. And they very much require her to see how they are different. And she could choose to adjust or not. And the relationships would be worse if she didn't. But she absolutely does. And although both Bambi and Maya are dominant over her, it's very different. It is Bambi's more the auntie. And Gigi likes to push her buttons more. And Maya is definitely more roughhousing friend level, but is absolutely clear that she is the boss between the 2 of them.
We actually saw earlier this week have Maya and Gija playing in the pond together. Which was a beautiful thing to see. We only saw it on the camera, only a little bit of it. Just happened, the cameras had been down because of lightning strikes. So they just came on a couple of days ago and we saw them playing in the pond together. It was just great to see because Gija's rough. I mean, she's...
Oh my God. And Maya hands it right back to her. She's like, pow. And they love it. I mean, But
Maya's always played that way.
Yeah.
I mean, Gita used to walk away from Maya when Maya would get in that energy level. And it's one of the things we've always wondered is, is there going to be a time when they find that space where they can be that roughhousing together, because they both have that same type of playful energy.
Yeah. And there's not a lot, especially with the Asian elephants. African elephants, yes, there's a lot of roughhousing that goes on with everybody, but most Asian elephants are definitely more passive physically. So they don't a lot of them don't like to play that way. So it's actually very cute to see the 2 of them beating each other up in the pond. And
when Nadia was here, you got to see the changes in Gija, the energy level, and sometimes more respectful, sometimes more playful, sometimes more spunky, the speed she's coming down on the fence line. Yeah. Sometimes much more respectful to Bambi and others.
Yeah, I got a feeling for it. Sometimes I just, the first few times I saw her, I just literally looked at the speed. I thought, she's coming really fast. And then you said, yes, but try to sense, the energy. She's fast, yes, because she's young, but what is her energy? Is it like aggressive? Is it just, I'm coming fast, but I'm chill? So, yeah, it is obviously difficult to see that through maybe, yes, a video or a photo, but you do explain your posts very, very well. But having said all of that and what you just explained, Kat's comparison with, these terrible situations you have where children might be, hidden under the stairs for 8 years. I mean, equally, Guiji was alone with her mum for 22 years, and you just explained how her relationship was with her mum, sometimes very aggressive, and she's only been there for 1.5 years now. And so, yes, and she's got 4 different elephants with different personalities, different recovery journey themselves, and she's having to learn all these rules. So when I was there, I found sometimes, I don't know, I'll say I felt not sorry for her, but sometimes I thought, who's she going to be with today? Because Mara and Hana are together, and then Bambi and Maya are together, and she's like a little ping pong, she goes between them. But I think maybe that's how her energy is on that day. So she feels more like being with Hana and Mara, she'll do that, and otherwise she'll go to Maya and Bambi. But she's definitely, I thought, still finding her way between the 2 groups. Yeah.
But that goes back to the similarities with she and Maya. Remember how Maya was during that stage of her recovery also, before she got really close with Bambi. She was between everybody. Mm-hmm. Sometimes she was on her own, and she was totally fine on her own. Yeah. But because she still had, just because you're not physically by somebody doesn't mean you're not connected with them. And there's actually a little video that happened yesterday with Maya and Mara and Hana talking back and forth, and they were nowhere near each other. That doesn't mean they're not connected with each other. Sometimes people have this image of, oh, they're friends, they have to be side by side. Not really. And Mara and Hana are so close, but sometimes they're, 100 meters apart, 200 meters apart. They're still talking. They're still rumbling back and forth. And then at some point yesterday came too much and they needed to get back together and they were running through the trees to find each other, bellowing all the way. But, that's with Geisha. Just because she's not standing next to somebody doesn't mean she's not with them.
Yeah. And I mean, we talked about it with Lady. People would say she's alone. And it's like, okay, well, physically within her 20 meters, yes, there is no one there. She shares space with Hana and Mara at different times when she wanted to. But even when she is in a yard all by herself, it doesn't mean she's not talking to the other girls all the time. I mean, we already know that they make noises we can hear, but science has shown that they also make noises that we can't pick up on. So who knows what level of communication is going on between all of them that we're completely unaware of. And just because she doesn't want somebody touching her or able to touch her, most likely because of her insecurities, because of her feet, doesn't mean that she doesn't feel like she's part of the herd in a completely different way that really works for her.
And let's go back to the sanctuary in Tennessee for a minute, because we don't have this dynamic here because we don't have elephants in vastly different sectors right now. I mean, they're all in the same. Even with Lady, it was crossing the mail yard, which was really relatively close. But in sanctuary in Tennessee, we had barns that were a kilometer apart, 1.5 kilometers apart, and we would actually call down to the other barn, "Hey, what's happening with your girls today? Everything okay?" Because the ladies up on the other side of the property were acting a little bit different, and sure enough, we'd hear that somebody wasn't doing well. And so they'd never even lived together. They never had shared the same space, and they're still connecting with that other group that is on the other side of the property. So yeah, definitely side by side is not necessarily, or not being side by side does not mean they're alone.
And Gita and Maya, for me, was still one of the most beautiful relationships I've seen between elephants. And they used to leave each other all the time. Maya would go off exploring somewhere. Gita would be somewhere different. And Maya always knew where Gita was, though, because when it came time to find them for dinner and we couldn't find Gita, Maya always found her first, only after she had already eaten all her food and was coming to see if she could get Gita's food. But they would spend hours and hours apart, and they adored each other.
But there was always the little rebels.
Sure.
You always had the little rumble communication of where are you?
Yeah, but it just lends to that, even when they're not side by side, they would still be talking to each other. And they had an amazing relationship. They just didn't need to be attached to each other all the time.
Yeah,
part of very complex.
It is.
For us
very, very
to understand.
Yeah.
And also for me, because I was very face value now, saying, as you said, of course, they communicate in ways that we can't hear. So just because I saw Guiji running between the two groups thinking, oh, poor thing, no, she's probably thinking that's great. Spending a time with those two, then wandering off, exploring, then going off and meeting the other two. So
who left some grain behind? Because the reality, we're dealing with 70 acres still, 80 acres still. It's still a very small space. For Geisha to cross 80 acres, it takes 2 minutes. She's on the other side. She's so fast. But she, as part of that's all of this goes back to the beauty of sanctuary and the beauty of autonomy and beauty of giving them that space to be what they need in that moment, even when they don't know exactly what they need.
Sure.
They're still trying to figure out what is going to make me happy today. What do I need for my personal recovery? And sometimes that personal recovery is stepping to the side, and sometimes it's celebrating, and sometimes Geisha right now is actually instigating social vocal play, which she hadn't normally instigated before, which she clearly instigated yesterday with a giant trumpet that I haven't heard from her. And it's I was talking to a new person who just arrived last night about that part of sanctuary. And you guys all know we've been doing this for many, many years now. And it is absolutely magical and just humbling to be a part of that journey and that growth, even when it isn't what we would consider ideal or what we want for them necessarily.
I thought one of the other funny aspects of it was somebody who was like, I can't help but feel protective over Hana for this specific post. And I had to laugh because my first thought was, listen, no one is more protective of Hana than Scott. If, we actually thought that something bad was going to happen, believe me, Scott would protect Hana.
That's
but
my
people
girl.
also don't realize, one of the biggest benefits of sanctuary, is space. Hana can leave. Hana can choose not to be anywhere near Guillermina on any day that she wants to. But Hana is that type of elephant who seems to want to help other elephants through their journey and to get to a better place. And she's the one who stayed with Bambi after Mara kicked Bambi to the side the first time, and would spend hours head to head with her, looking like they're having these big conversations about life. And she's teaching Bambi all the ins and outs of sanctuary or whatever happened during those conversations. But that is very much who Hana is. And if she wanted to remove herself from that space and not have to deal with what happens in some of those instances, she absolutely could. She's choosing not to. And what we're doing is respecting her choice not to leave and giving them the opportunity to work through what's going on in their own way. You know, yes, if something were to happen, we can step in, but, you know, there's nothing significant going on.
And they're also creating the space for Gija and giving her that chance. You know, even when she isn't ideal, you know, they still give her a chance. Tomorrow comes, we give you a chance. Next thing comes, we give you a chance. They don't isolate her. They don't segregate her. They know that she's on a journey. You know, they see her trying just as we see her trying, you know, and they also see those days that everyone celebrates when she is hyper respectful and everything seems to click, you know, but that, you know, the days that don't click doesn't mean it's a failure. You know, it doesn't mean it's traumatic, doesn't mean it's horrible. It's just part of the journey.
And we've seen in Tennessee elephants close out another elephant. I mean, it's not, they have all of those abilities. You know, those are all choices they can make and actions they can take. But at this point, they are not there with her. And they're still allowing her all the space that she needs to figure out essentially how to have 24 years of emotional growth in just a couple of years, because she never had them.
Yeah. So it goes again to putting back our own expectations of how we feel as humans watching Guiji's recovery, how we feel it should go. Because, okay, you know, she's out of the pit now, she's young, why doesn't she adapt? Why isn't her recovery journey faster? So we need to push back our expectations that we are putting on her, and just let her be. And we trust you. Well, I say I trust you the 6 years that I have known you, and all your supporters surely do as well. Maybe it's just an unusual situation having such a young elephant from such a deprived background, as you said. So yes, we have to do our own homework.
Yeah, I think we have to celebrate what she's actually gone through and how much she's grown. You know, and if, you know, we're part of this also, and Kat we were talking about it earlier, is in sanctuaries in general across all species. And this comes from conversations with the groups from the sanctuaries with the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries, and some of the group discussions that take place. And some of that is introduction, you know, social challenges, you know, and how do you deal with these social challenges? Because all of these species, whether it be big cats or primates or chimpanzees or whatever it is, or elephants, you know, they're coming from impoverished past and negligence, issues with tremendous amount, issues with trust, issues with respect, issues with abuse. And all these sanctuaries have the same journey. And what we're doing is sharing that journey with you guys. You know, we're sharing the highs and the lows. We're sharing the ebb and the flow, because I think it gives more importance or more power to that journey of recovery. And it's not just to come to a sanctuary and all is well. And all these sanctuaries have the same thing. It's never just perfect and peaches and rainbows and strawberries and butterflies or whatever wonderful things you want to say. Puppy dogs. Peaches and rainbows works.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, this journey that all these animals go through, and we are sharing it with you guys because it's an important part to truly honor their past, is to honor that journey forward, all the good steps and the bad steps or the difficult steps.
Okay. Well, that was a great detour, really interesting, and it made me think about a few things that I was possibly putting onto the elephants while I was with you and watching them and thinking, why is this happening and why is this happening? And also, I just remembered you said in a previous podcast, also, you are putting together individual groups. They're not family, you know. It's like putting 5 random humans together from all over the world, different cultures, different upbringing, everything, and then saying, oh, well, your humans get on together. So
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do exceedingly well. They do far better than most humans would do in that scenario.
And I think, again, as Scott was just saying, some of it goes back to the fact that a lot of times these conflicts and struggles aren't really talked about. So people have this false sense of animals going to sanctuary and everything going super well. And, when we see other people from other sanctuaries, at conferences and stuff, everybody has the same struggles. Everybody has the same concerns. Everybody has open discussions about how do you deal with this? Because when this happens, this doesn't work. We haven't tried this, so on and so forth. So this is the reality of sanctuary for all species. It's just not something that I think mostly because of fear of retribution and blah, blah, blah.
Judgment, criticism.
It's just not really discussed, but
it's also
it happens everywhere.
It's what makes sanctuary so important, though.
Sure.
Yeah.
To give them that space and give them that honor the journey. Give them the autonomy to find that way.
Again, thank you for sharing all that information with us. And if our supporters and listeners have any more questions, then you can write an email to podcast@globalelephants.org if you have any more questions regarding Guiji and her recovery. We will, of course, be talking about her and her deceased mum, Pocha, in the next podcast coming up after we've finished off with Bambi. But always feel free to reach out. I know that the whole social media team and also Kat are there to answer your questions that you do put under videos and put under posts. So thank you two, for taking time out.
Thank you, Nadia, once again. If I can add one thing, only because you said you were guilty of imposing some of your stuff on her, having those questions of what's going on. We have the same challenges.
Sure.
We have to challenge ourselves all the time to remember to step back and remember to see it from a different perspective, not just through our protective lens and not through our desires. So you guys aren't alone. I know it's, sometimes, we have these conversations, but we're on the same journey as you guys are.
And it's not like we were disappointed to see those kind of comments. I just thought it was more interesting that it didn't seem like she was getting viewed through the same lens that the other girls were. So it was just something we had wanted to talk about more to, again, just get people to think a little differently and see some of the other side of it.
Challenging ourselves as well. We're all on the journey.
Well, yeah, we haven't finished growing and evolving either. No. If we had, then it would be, well, I suppose we wouldn't be here anymore. But always something to learn. So thank you.
Thank you, Nadia.
I know what you're up to. I presume later on elephant feeding and Cat probably loads of paperwork. But I hope you have a lovely afternoon. Enjoy the sun. Send us some sun.
We get to feed 7 baby owls, so it's okay.
Oh, 7?
Oh yeah. They brought us a whole bunch of them.
7, almost 9. They had 2 others that are a little bit older that we had to say no to for now. Next week, they should be coming.
Oh my God. How often do they have to be fed?
Just 3 times. Yeah, they do 2 times at night about just after dusk, a little bit about 10:30ish, 10 o'clock, and then first thing in the morning.
Right before, right around sunrise. I'm keeping them on more of their schedule versus the human schedule.
Okay. Well, send us some photo and I can get our producer Bob to put that into the video podcast edition for YouTube. So, okay. Bye. And we'll catch up for our next recording. Until then, take care.
Take care, Nadia.
Bye.
Bye. As we wrap up this week's episode, a reminder that if you'd like to stay up to date with current events at the Sanctuary, you can do so by following Global Sanctuary for Elephants on their various social media channels. You'll find all the details in the show notes. Thank you so much, and until we meet up in 2 weeks' time, take care.